Hello everyone, it's Maria and I am going to narrate this flight after the fact, mostly because although the flight was in part a camera test, the camera that I had set up for audio work didn't work. That's why we test. Anyway, I can tell you a little bit about what's going on. I had brought this helicopter in to my landing zone for cherry season, and it needs fuel, so I'm doing a camera test and a fuel run at the same time. And I'm also going to show you a brand new camera setup that I've got that'll be great during cherry season, and I'm calling that my skid cam, and it should come up in a moment here when I take off. So I've just started it up. I've done my mag check, I've done my horn check, I'm powering it up to my 100% RPM. There is a rock on the ground next to my left skid, so you're going to see me skirt a little bit to the side here as soon as I pick up. That rock is a danger for dynamic rollover. You can't see it in the skid cam picture. But I picked it up and I'm moving sideways, I'm checking all my gauges, everything is good, and then I'm going to head off down the road. And I was really fortunate that the skid cam camera's battery was charged enough to get this footage. I didn't think it had enough charge in it, and I can't run a power cable out there, but I was able to get the whole flight on the skid cam, and that's kind of cool. When I do actual cherry drawing, I'll try to have this camera set up a couple of times so you can see what goes on under the helicopter when I fly over the trees. Those trees are blowing around like crazy. So right now I'm flying from Malaga to East Wenatchee across the river. Malaga is where I live. That orchard where I'm parked is very close to where I live, which is kind of convenient for me. And it's mostly rural in the area. A lot of orchards mostly, not too many row crops. You can see it in both views now, out the side and also out the front. The river is the Columbia River, and I'm crossing it by Malaga. I'm sure I'm talking about it, waving my hands around, thinking that the audio camera is working, and of course it's not. That's just the way it is. I can talk a lot with my hands. So I'm making radio calls at the same time now. I'm letting anybody at the airport know that I'm coming in and that I'm going to be landing for fuel. So now I'm over East Wenatchee. There's some more orchards here. Most of the orchards in the area are cherries and also apples. Cherries and apples are the biggest fruit around here, fruits around. And we also have some apricots, or apricots, depending on how you say it, and also some pears, but not that many in this particular area. This is Wenatchee Pangbourne Airport, and I am coming in near the VOR, and I'll be crossing the runway again. I make a radio call when I cross the runway in case there's someone there that didn't hear my first call or doesn't realize that I'm going to be crossing low level. I also look both ways before I cross because I don't want to, maybe somebody's not on the radio at all. They're not required to be. So I'll cross the runway and then I'll land at the fuel area. And you'll see that I'll slow down considerably as I come in. There's a lot of, when they teach you how to fly, they teach you how to make your approach at a certain speed and do this at a certain altitude and do all that. And that's good to learn how to do control and to have a rule of thumb. But once you get to be a more experienced pilot, I've got nearly 4,000 hours at this point, which I know is not a ton, but it's considerable. You fly the way you need to fly. So I tend to get across the runway quickly so I don't get in anybody's way, and then I slow down before I make my landing. So I'm coming in now to the fuel island. I like to park right over that drain that you see. That gets me pretty close to the island to fill with fuel. And you'll see the skid touch down. You'll see why they call it a skid. So I'm going to shut it down and I'm going to fill it with fuel. And I'm not going to show you that because it's pretty boring. So we'll get back in after I fueled. I also checked the oil. I checked the oil when I'm at the fuel island, and the reason for that is my landing zone is not level, and I will get a bad fuel reading when I on level ground. A bad, not only bad fuel reading, but I'll get a bad fluid reading is what I should have said. So, for example, before I took off, it looked like my hydraulic fluid and my transmission fluid, for the gearbox fluid, I should say, it looked like they were really low. But after I landed for fuel and checked them, again, they were completely normal. It was just because I was landed on that slope. So I need to keep an eye on that anytime that I'm landed on level ground. I check all my fluids again, make sure they're all good, top off the oil if I need to, and then get on my way. There's not too much exciting about this particular part of the flight. This flight I've done a billion times. I'm basically just going right back to where I started from. I had wanted to do more flying and get things done. This was the day before my contract start. It was raining. You could probably see a little bit of the drizzle on the windscreen. And the problem is that my clients will sometimes call me to dry before the contract starts. So I wanted to make sure that I had fuel on board. I had, at this point, I'm checking the camera, you can see me. It's still blinking. At this point, I had no fuel on board, really, just barely enough to get to the airport. And I needed to top off the tanks because I need to start with full fuel. And it was like a crummy day. It was morning time and I hadn't had my breakfast yet, and really all I wanted to do was just get this thing done and go home and have my breakfast and get on with the rest of my day in case they called. Also check out the cameras to make sure they were working, and also new camera mounts, new device mounts. You see my iPad there right under my face. That is not the way it's going to be, but it was the first try at that. A lot of different things I need to set up for this helicopter. Again, if you're not aware, Mr. Blue is gone. Mr. Blue got sold in May, and Mr. Blue is actually in overhaul right now with it for its new owner. And I am leasing this helicopter for the season until I can get a replacement for Mr. Blue. So that's the situation. It's a real working helicopter. As you might have noticed in the skid cam footage, it has a hook. The owner does long line work. He does all kinds of different lifting work. He does a lot of wildlife work, capture and all that. So this is a real working helicopter. It's really gnarly inside, you know, like dirty and stuff, but it's functionally it's fine. It flies well. It seems to do everything I need it to do, so it's all good. So at this point I've gone through my startup process and I've checked my horn again and I'm blabbing away and who knows what I'm saying. I'm looking around to see what's going on. I remember there were 2 planes on the radio and I'm looking to see where they are. And there was also an airplane parked near me, not very near me, but a little bit near me, where there were 2 people walking around. I wanted to make sure where they were before I took off. So I'm about to take off. I'm just blabbing. You can see my downwash moved the cover on the fuel pump thing. So now I'm turning and also kind of moving sideways so my tail rotor doesn't go into that fuel island. And I'm making a radio call. And I'm looking. I remember somebody had just taxied down to the end of the runway, but they weren't taking off yet, and someone else had called downwind, but I was definitely going to stay below him. And I told him that. There's no tower at Wenatchee Airport, despite the fact that we have airline service. We use a common traffic advisory frequency to just tell each other what we're doing, and that keeps us all out of trouble. So I just crossed the runway, and I'm accelerating and climbing. I don't have to climb too high because I'll be over the river in a minute and then I'll have to descend to my landing zone anyway. It's less than a 3-minute flight to get there. So while you're watching this, I just want to remind you this is the kind of videos that I make, cockpit point of view primarily. I try to add different camera angles when I can. I try to keep it interesting. I probably won't be doing too much more nose cam stuff. Because frankly that looks just like drone footage, and why don't I just send a drone? So I will try to keep the videos short. If videos go long, there'll be multiple parts. But I'll try to keep short videos, and I'm going to try to visit some new places this summer that I haven't been before. If you're not a subscriber, please do subscribe, and I'm going to tell you that later on again. And also comments. Please put comments in for the video. That helps people find it. It makes it show that there's a lot of interaction. I do read all the comments. I don't tolerate spam though, and I don't tolerate people who are nasty. So just be aware of that. Try to keep it civil there. So back over Malaga now, and I'm homing in on my landing zone. And I'm probably talking on the radio. I have a tendency to touch my microphone every time I talk on the radio. And I must be talking to you because I'm moving my hands around. So we'll just pretend that I'm saying what I'm saying right now. And I'm hoping I get that audio problem resolved because I don't really like narrating videos all the time, although the sound quality is a lot better. So I can see my landing zone like right beyond my face there in the picture, and I'm coming around. There's this little hill here. I don't like coming low over this hill. I usually go wide around, but lately I've been trying to keep it a little bit closer to the landing zone. And the landing zone was just recently mowed. I mowed the section where I'm going to land, and then after I put the helicopter there, they came out and they mowed the rest. The main trick with landing in this area is it looks level to you, but it is not level. There is probably very few level places in this entire landing zone. So what you're going to see is I'm going to set it down. I'm going to not like the way it is, and I'll pick it back up and I'll move it. And I really like the way it is in that second spot. You'll see what I do here. Of course, the skid cam's battery was dead by this point, so I have no skid cam footage. See, I don't like that. I'm going to move up a little bit and set it back down, and this was a primo spot. So now I need to go through this shutdown process, and I did narrate parts of it. As soon as I set it down, I cut the throttle back down to the cool down temperature. Cool down RPM, which I'm pointing at, is between 60 and 70%. And if it's really hot, you want it to cool down for at least 2 minutes. There's a cylinder head temperature gauge you're supposed to consult. On a really hot day, I'll let it go longer than 2 minutes. On a day that's much cooler or a much shorter flight, and this day is a perfect example of that, I will sometimes finish up before the 2 minutes. I watch that gauge. That gauge is my guide. So in the meantime, I'm probably turning off the radio so I don't have to hear the people on the frequency talking. And I'm talking now about my iPad and the mount that I've got for it. I don't like it being horizontal like that, so I've got a new setup for next time. I use the iPad in flight to find the orchard blocks that I have to dry, so it is kind of important. And I'm pointing out now that there is a mount up there that the owner had put in, an adhesive mount up there that I can put a GoPro, but the problem is that when I mount a GoPro right there, it shows the whole front seat area, which is great if I've got a passenger, but if I don't have a passenger, it's really not too useful. I'm not sure if I'm going to use that like that at all. I have some other options to try. And the audio camera was sitting in the seat next to me, and it was connected, but it for some reason didn't work. So I'm going to finish shutting down here. I just cut the throttle to idle and turned off the clutch. I wait about 30 seconds, and then I pull the mixture, and then you'll hear my voice come on. I'll let the other sound take over for you, and you can hear me babbling my usual self at the end. It should be very cool to see what's going on the trees underneath. So we'll see. Thanks for watching. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. subscribe, tell your friends. I know this wasn't the best video, but it's a little sample of the cockpit point of view and the kinds of things you can see on the channel. So if you are not a subscriber, subscribe, click the bell, and please comment. Comments help get the channel recognized. I didn't know that until recently, so now I'm going to tell you to comment all the time, and I will try to reply to all the comments. I do read them all. Thanks very much. Bye.